Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be looking at lighting modifiers. Now, I opened up some questions on Instagram, my Facebook group, and in the YouTube channel, and I sort of wanted to know what you guys wanted to know about light, and it turns out there's a lot of questions. There's no way I can answer them all in one video, so I'm going to break this up into sections. This is sort of like part one of probably like a 10 to 20 video series. If you do want to learn about this, do hit subscribe. If you press the bell icon, you'll get the notifications when the next videos come out. I'm aiming to do one of these a week. But we'll see how it pans out because it's quite a lot of work, it turns out. But anyway, I digress. Today's video, we're looking at lighting modifiers. And I could make a video of several hours on each modifier, and I do plan to touch on each modifier in their own video. So we'll have a video about spill kills, a video about soft light, hard light, a video about softboxes, octoboxes, all those different things. But this video, the aim of this is to go through every type of modifier that I use as a food photographer, how I use it, why I use it, what it is, and how it's built. So to start with, I'm going to show you the modifiers, explain them to you, and just go through them one at a time. Then we're going to look at work where I've used that modifier, the look it created, and why I chose it. So it sort of gives you a good all-round understanding, because a lot of people have asked, what's the best modifier? And there isn't one. I mean, there's better versions of each modifier. So there's a good softbox and a bad softbox, and we'll go into that in a separate video. But in terms of whether it's a beauty dish, a softbox, whatever it may be, it's horses for courses. It's choosing the look you want. So I'm going to help you understand which modifier will create which look. And I'm also going to advise at the end as to what I think you should buy first, and then, how you should expand on that kit. So let's dive right into it at the very beginning, and that's bare bulb. There's going to be some jump cuts in this video. So here's our head. This is the lamp. This is our flash tube, which we never touch with our bare hands, always with gloves. And it needs to be looking as clear as possible. And this bit here, this is actually a glass protective dome, and it also helps with color balance on certain heads. Now, this is a very powerful light. This is 6,400 watts. This is a lot of flash. But they come in different sizes. You can get your 500 watt, which is very common, although I think 300 and 400 now becoming quite common as well. But this is like a beast of a light. And when I talk about different things, it will make sense as to why I own such powerful lights. Now, bare bulb, this is just going to fling light out there. There's no particular pattern to it. It's just like it'll come out the sides, it'll go forward, it'll just go everywhere. And one of the reasons we modify the light is because this isn't always the aesthetic we're after. Now, granted, I've shot a lot of work with a bare light like this, but it's not always exactly what we want. So the first modifier we're going to look at is probably the easiest to get into, and that's the spill kill. Now, this here is a spill kill. It is a often specular light, which means it has the tin foil stuff going on the inside. I'm looking at my screen, see if you can see that. Gives it that nice crisp look, and it often produces hard light. Now, this is actually quite a big spill kill. And we're going to talk about hard and soft light modifier sizes in a separate video as well. Hang on, my cat's attacking my sofa. But this is a spill kill. This will give hard light, very crisp shadows. There'll be no sort of fall off in the light. It will just be, here's light, here's shadow. That'll be all. It's obviously going to keep the light in quite a small area as well, especially this one here. You see how it comes up and then almost to a straight line? It's not parabolic, but it's heading in that direction. A more common spill kill, especially for those who shoot Godox, would be about this size. This is much smaller, and it will just spread the light a bit more. I'm going to do an entire video on spill kills because these are incredibly versatile modifiers. But they're very cheap, they're affordable, you can do a lot with them. It's a very good item to have in your food photography arsenal. Now, the good thing about these is you can add to them, and you normally either add a sock to get rid of the specular here and diffuse it, or you add a grid. Now, grids come at different prices and different sizes. Now, this one here is a particularly expensive grid. You can see me through it, there we go. This is a very tight grid, and it'll narrow that beam of light. It'll stop it from spreading so much. This one here is a bit of a wider grid. And you can see how straight on the light's coming through, but as we angle it, so this will be light to the side, it won't get any. So it's a good tool when you just need to pick out an item in your shot. We use it quite a lot. It's a very, very versatile bit of kit. I don't often grid softboxes, but these things here, they come out on most shoots, very useful. And then we start to head to the more bizarre end of reflectors. And I've got more of these I'm actually going to show you today. But this here is a very wide spill kill. And you've probably seen these. I got this off Amazon. They're incredibly cheap. It was like £10. And what this does is it allows you to have the sort of throwing out of light everywhere that the bare bulb does, but it stops some of it spilling by having these sides here, and it also adds a specular element to the light. Now, there's only really 4 qualities of light. They are diffuse or specular, and that's whether it's like a matte light. My cat's just jumped into a softbox. Muggy. And that's whether it's a matte light or a specular crisp light from this shiny material here. Muggy, we're trying to make a video. Didn't you be good for a minute? Or it's hard or soft, and that's to do with how big the light is relative to the subject. The smaller the light is compared to your subject, the harder it is, and the closer it is and bigger it is, the softer it will be. I'm going to get rid of the kitten. I'm going to go and put her to bed. You all good? Then we're going to carry on. Okay, and then we start to get to bigger reflectors. This one here, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a 30-degree reflector. Now, there's nothing here to adjust the light, but you'll notice on the inside of this one, it's white, which means on that range of light types, it's not specular, but it's more diffuse. Now, it's not fully diffuse, as if there was a fabric over the top, and we'll get to that with my next modifier, but it's heading in that direction. Now, this will obviously give a bigger light source, so assuming they're at the same distance, this will be softer. Now, this light here is something I use for a lot of my portfolio work, and I've got another version of it with an extra extender, which I'm going to show you next. Now, this is one of my favorite lights. This is the Bowen's Soft Light. Nobody else makes anything like this. It is a giant reflector, and it has a diffusion panel on the front, and it has a splitter diffusion in here, which sort of, it doesn't polarize the light, but it sort of breaks it up, and it gives a really good quality of light. And this recreates a sunny day. It is very useful and very versatile. And I'm going to show you how I use it. Now, unfortunately, these are like gold dust. There's not many of them around. They're pretty affordable. They're about £250 each. I don't know if you can see in there. Not really, can you? Now, the good bits of kit, it's very old-fashioned equipment. It's used a lot on still life stuff. When people were photographing models, maybe architectural models, they'd use this sort of modifier to recreate sunlight in the shoot. But I use it to recreate sunlight on my food. And very versatile, very useful, really good for the style of work that I shoot. If you ever want that morning sun vibe, this can be a great bit of kit. Now, another bit of kit that I use in the same vein is the beauty dish. And I have a small and a large one. And as you can see, these are very similar. The main difference being there's something in the middle here. So the light hits this from behind and then spreads in a more even sort of way. Now, you could argue that putting a bit of fabric over here would create the same look as the Bowen's Soft Light, but it doesn't. I don't really know why, because in theory, you'd expect it to. But here's a small one. We use this when we want to get that real beam of light, I guess. It's used very different in portraiture. Now, normally you'd have these no more than 2 meters away from a portrait subject for it to work. But in our realm of work, we can play with that a bit more. And I use it to sort of create more homogeneous light. So when the spill of the light is more even. And then here we've just got a bigger one with a white interior. Now, I don't use these much anymore, but I still have them just in case I need that extra aesthetic, I guess. Now, a lot of you won't need all of this kit. I work as a commercial photographer. So when a client goes, can we have it like this? I have to say yes. If you're working for yourself more often, or if you're shooting for yourself, you don't need all these options there. And even when you're starting out as a commercial photographer, they don't expect you to have everything when you first start. I'm 10 years in, so I've got a lot of junk. Perhaps the most common bit of kit is the softbox. Now, I do not have octoboxes. They don't work for food photography, and I'm going to explain that in a video all about softboxes. But for now, we're just going to try and keep this as sort of streamlined as possible. This is a softbox. It is a baffled box, and these are the baffles. It's specular on the inside. There is a lot you can do with the softbox. There is an unbelievable amount you can do with the softbox. I'm going to do an entire video just on the softbox, and I'm also going to do a video on which size softbox, because this is obviously a small one. This is like a 1x1 meter. I've got ones over there which are 6 times the size of this, and every size in between. But this is a great piece of kit. This is incredibly versatile. It creates the light from a window. If you look at the size of it and the diffusion, this here is a window. It has a slightly hotter spot in the middle, and it sort of bows out. And the bigger you get, which we'll go into in a different video, it gives you different looks because of that. But this here is like your first bit of kit you ever go for. Now, the last bit of kit we're going to talk about today is what I get all the questions about, and that's the softbox in the background, which is actually on that side of me. And it's also not a softbox. It's made of fiberglass. It's called a soft hazy light, and it is by Broncolor. And this offers incredibly homogeneous, even light with great color accuracy. I'm going to do a whole video on it. It is like As far as I'm aware, it is the best bit of kit I could buy for my style of shooting. That's not to say you need it, but for what I do, there's nothing better than it for me. Now, it's a big bit of kit. It's a heavy bit of kit. They're often very expensive. Now, brand new, they were £10,000 a piece, but they've dropped in price so much, and when studios go bust, they can't get rid of them, and you can pick them up for pretty much pocket change. So they're very good bits of kit. I'm going to show you what that looks like anyway. So that's sort of looking at the kit we're going to be discussing now. And what I want to do now is jump into my computer. I'm going to show you images of where I've used them, why I've used them, how I've used them. So maybe you can look at that image and go, yeah, that's the kind of aesthetic I'm trying to achieve. Which bit of kit was used for that? And hopefully that's of use. Okay, here we go. So I did a video ages ago where I photographed a pineapple, and we basically just looked at what different modifiers did to a pineapple. It is the most pointless video in the world. I am embarrassed to have done it because we don't generally have to only photograph one subject, and light is relative to the item we're photographing. So now that I've explained all the modifiers to you, what I'm going to do is go through these shots here, tell you which modifiers I used, how I used them, and why I used them, to hopefully give you a better understanding as to the process that goes into it. And like I said, this is tip of the iceberg stuff. So do put your questions in the comments below, because I do want to read them so I can see what people are getting confused about, and then hopefully add some clarity to all the noise. Now, I have gone for a mixture of different lights here. We're actually going to do it in reverse and start at the very end. So this here is my wide reflector that I showed you. This is the Bowens wide without the soft bit on it. And it gives a nice diffuse, and that doesn't mean soft. It just means that it's not too specular because it's white on the inside. Crisp light. Now, it's also quite hard because it's quite a small modifier, which is why we're getting these really nice deep shadows. Now, as you can see towards the end of it here, we're getting a bit of a darker area compared to in the middle and at the top, and that's just because the light was so close that the fall off was quite great, and I've got a whole other video coming out next week on that. So that's what this modifier gives us. This is the wide reflector. Now, this is the 1 meter softbox. This here gives us diffused light because it has the big diffusion panel on the top. It is more diffused than this. This has a non-specular element to it, but this is more diffused. It is soft, as a softbox sort of suggests, but the actual name softbox is not to do with the softness of the light. It's actually to do with the construction. You'll notice my hazy light in the background. That is not a softbox. That is a hard box. And for years, that's what photographers used. And then someone was clever and decided to make a soft version of these boxes. It's a light box. And it's really close, which is what gives us this nice fall off of light. And this will probably be used as an example in my next video. And it's a very even, diffused look of light. It is nice. It is pleasing. It is sort of what a lot of food photographers expect to see when they first start out. Now, this here is an even bigger softbox. It says 2 meter softbox here, but I've just measured it as 2 by 3 meters. It is a behemoth. And this gives incredibly soft light when up close because it is so big. Now I'm doing a whole video on these softboxes, so I'm not going to go into too much here, because otherwise this video here will basically have to end up being some sort of digital download because it'll be so big. But you can see how even the light is, how beautiful the light is. It is naturally beautiful. And by that, I mean, it's what people expect as a beautiful light source. It's not challenging. It's not difficult. It's just a nice, easy sort of way to look at an image. I'm particularly fond of this image. Now, this here is not the final edit, actually. I've pulled up the wrong file, but it's the same. It does the same. This here is using a spill kill. And you can see how deep those shadows are and how hard the light is and how specular. You see there's like nice white, you see there's nice white like poppy bits coming on here. That's the specular quality of the light. See how it's really burning almost. It's a really hard light source. It's hard and it's specular. It could be hard and diffused, but it's not as hard and specular. Great for those graphic shots. And it's also one of the wider ones. This, I think, was done with the broncolor one. So it's a bigger than the sort of Bowens or Godox ones you can buy. But it's sort of double the size. So you're starting to get a bit of breakup in the shadows at the end. This bit here where it goes from black to normal shadow, that's called umbra and penumbra shadow. Go on Wikipedia. It'll change the way that you see shadows. Okay, now this here is the hazy light. Now, it's like a softbox in that it's a box, but its particular construction and design gives it really homogeneous light. Now, I'd actually zoomed the light in on this. You can see the slight hotspot in the middle. So I'd pushed the light forward inside of the reflector to give it a real centralized sort of light, but it's still pretty homogeneous. Now on this one here, we've used the hazy light, but I haven't pushed the light forward. So you can see in the catches here, it's a real even catch light. Now, a lot of the times you'd need to use a scrim to get this sort of light. It's also very clear and crisp light. I know it's a hazy light, but it's very clean light, and it's very good for color accuracy. Just because of the construction of it. You get a really good catch light. If you're shooting a bottle, for example, with this, you wouldn't need to use a scrim to get those straight catch lights because the construct means that it doesn't sag like a softbox. Now, I'm just going to go back to this for a second. I could have easily used the spill kill to get this summer light look, but I didn't want that because you see the shadows here. I didn't want the hard shadows because I find that in a high color scenario with a white background, sometimes a hard shadow can just make it too contrasty and too punchy. So these are the thoughts that you have to take into consideration when choosing your modifier. It's not just the shape of the light or the hard and soft, it's all these little details and how it adds up to the sum of the image. So this is the soft light reflector I showed you, and you can see from the catch light how evenly it fills. Now this is an incredibly detailed light. It gives off a real solid punch of light. It's not specular, so it's diffused, but it's small, so it's hard, which is a mouthful in itself. You can see the shadows are really nice. See when you go into here where it's dark and it's deeply dark. If I'd used a softbox and a big one up close, it might have filled these out to a softer gradation. It gives great contrast, which you need in a scene like this. And because of the scene, that's why I chose it over a softbox. If this was shot with a softbox, it'd be almost washed out. So I needed that bit more punch, but I still didn't want to go full specular. Now this is also the hazy light, although I've called it a hazy light. And again, when we look at the shadows, we've got that nice fall off of light. Now, catch lights weren't important here because we don't have them. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use octoboxes and umbrellas, because the catch lights are hideous. You don't want to see an octobox with a grid on it in your sort of salad and your tomatoes. Nevertheless, this light here is great for this application. A normal softbox could have also been used, absolutely, without a doubt. If anything, it was more convenience that I had the hazy light set up. So this would work with a softbox beautifully as well. The distance was important in order to get the light to dark. So it's sort of like an ombre situation going in two different ways. We've got the density into the orange, but we've also got the light to dark. If I'd have used a bigger softbox, I could have gone further back and evenly lit it, but I used a smaller softbox so I could come in close and really utilize the inverse square law for that. I'm doing a video all about that, so don't worry. So again, on the hazy light, again, close so we get the gradation of light. The closer you are, the more dramatic the gradation will be. Beautiful catch lights, had the light zoomed all the way back inside the head, so it was really even catch lights, really even and homogeneous spill of light. Now this time I used a softbox, and you can see there was slightly weird catch light a softbox gives compared to the hazy. Now this is nitpicking at its finest. Like, it doesn't really matter. But the softbox here allowed me to move the light a little bit further back so we didn't have too dramatic a fall off of light. So what I didn't want was black shadow here, white shadow here, black shadow, just really extreme contrast. We've already got the colour. That's where the contrast is in this shot. If I'd have gone for a specular light, I think it'd have been too distracting because already on the orange, you see it glistening here. And it's important. This is why just doing a comparison light to light doesn't work. You need to do is sort of how you'd use it and why you'd use it. And this is a prime example of that in a shot. Okay, this is back to that wide reflector. Now this is a composite. So I wanted the hard light, but I also wanted the dramatic shadow. So it had to come close in. So you see how we've got nice dark shadows down one side, and the shadows here are pretty decent as well. I needed that crisp shadow here. Now, I had to have the light close. If I'd have shot this as one shot, this bottom part of the frame would have been nearly black. So I did two things here. One, I shot the background with a gradation with a light distance that worked for the background. So I moved the light further away to get a more even gradation. Then I moved the light in close, and I shot each item to get that nice crisp image. So lots of light, lots of contrast, because contrast is important with these shapes and with this here, so it doesn't look washed out. And that's why I chose it. If I'd have used a softbox, it would have been too soft. So although the wide reflector up close is softer, it's not as soft as a softbox, because you have to remember it's not just about hard, soft, specular and diffuse. We also have to pull in the inverse square law, and I've got a whole video on that. So if this is confusing, don't worry, go with it for now. Wait until the next video is out, watch that, and then come back to this. And I think between the two, flitting between those two videos, it'll really help you out. But that's why we chose this modifier. Now this is bare bulb, something that people don't often like to talk about. It's hard. It's very hard. And I actually modified the light with some bits of black card and stuff, but it's a very hard light. You can see these burning orbs, these thick black shadows. And you can see here how there's like two shadows. That's because there's two bare bulb lights coming in. That's why you get this slight dark and grey, and it doesn't quite make sense. It's also got an obscene depth of field for a shot that was an f8, because I used a camera with movement, so I could focus all the way in here is sharp, all the way here is sharp, but then some points in the floor are not so sharp down here. And then like here it's not sharp, but then here it is sharp. So it's a bit of a, it's a technical wet dream, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's sort of going, look what I can do with fancy lenses when I show, photo agents and stuff like that. But anyway, I digress. Could have put a modifier on it. I could have put a spill curl on it, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want that punch of light coming in being too specular, because we've already got these metallic sort of like cans here. Now, if I'd have put a more diffuse spill kill on it, that could have worked, but the bare bulb looked better. And I did try these options and I went, yep, no, that does not look good. And eventually we just went bare bulb and it looked great for what I was trying to achieve. Not everyone's cup of tea. Okay, now this is when we start to mix things. Now the Octobank I didn't show you at the start of the video because it's too big. So hopefully we got some B-roll spinning through here. This Octobank is an indirect Octobank. I said I don't use Octoboxes, and I don't generally. I own this indirect Octobank. I can't remember why I bought it originally or where it came from, but I have it. And it's very useful for certain things because it is specular like a spill kill, but because it's so big, it is soft. So it is soft and specular, which is a great combination. And I use this here as a wraparound light, I believe, with a spill kill in front of it. Now, it could have actually been a big softbox with a spill kill in front of it with the diffusion panels ripped out, but it's a similar vibe. And you see here with the shadows where we get the two different sets of shadows, that's from the two different light qualities. This is not an umbra penumbra break of a hard line. This is one shadow from a hard line, and then the other shadow obviously lives underneath this because they'll come from the same direction, but then bleeds out a bit further. And that's how I got that slightly 3D glasses look to the shadow, which was important in this shot for me. I didn't want just a hard cutout because it would have looked overly photoshopped. Okay, and again, this is mixing light sources. So for this image, I needed two things. I needed this sort of specular punch to the fruit, but I also needed this gradation down the side. And this is caused by a softbox shooting through a scrim. I'm doing a video on that as well because that's a whole video. But then I needed this nice punch of light in here to make the oranges stand out. Otherwise, they look dead. So we had a spill kill on with a really tight grid coming straight down into the glass to get those, and then the light coming across here. And it's all just thought process. I don't think of a shot and then come up with a random lighting scenario. I have the exact image in my head before I start shooting. And then once I've decided what that image is, I break down the components of what's important. And then I work out how I need to light it. So a lot of my shots are one light shots because that's how I sort of view the world in a very graphic way, but sometimes one light doesn't work and you need to bring in other elements to give you these nice little distractions, or to avoid distraction, to add interest, to add conflict in the image. And that's all very important. Okay, and again here, this was using that big specular octa because what I needed was soft light. I really didn't want hard shadows down here. I wanted a bit of shadow, but not hard shadow. But I wanted the specular quality of light on the meat to make it glisten and really like pop. So that was the only modifier that would have done what I wanted. Now, could have shot it with a softbox, could have shot it with a spill kill, a beauty dish, any manner of lights, and it would have been fine. But it's about that choice that you make where you go, what do I want it to look like? What's important to me? Brilliant, let's do that. That's how we're going to get on with this light. Now here is a softbox through a scrim because we wanted really soft light. We wanted that sort of like summer evening. You know, you just picked your fruit in your garden, you're down by the potting shed. I don't have any of these things, by the way. There's no potting shed in our garden. But nevertheless, that's the sort of British late summer vibe I wanted to give off. And we needed the light to be really soft. And the softbox was not enough because the softbox had to be far enough back to give me the even spill of light, but then it was too small even with a big one. So we laid a scrim down as well just to really soften that light. It is as diffuse could be. Now here, same softbox, no diffusion, much closer, and you'll see the light fall off dark, really bright. Looks a bit clipped actually, which is my fault. And you see the catch lights, and this is important. These catch lights here are the shape of a window. If I use an umbrella, if I used a spill kill, if I used an octabox, they'd be distracting and they wouldn't look natural to the viewer's eyes. This is why softboxes are such a, used tool in the food world. Now this one here is a mixture. We've got a softbox lighting, the ambient light, but I wanted to pick these here up. So I used a really tight grid, like obscenely tight. It's one of the bronze-coloured grids. It's the tightest one they do. They're slightly obscenely priced. I think they're about £150 a grid. But it allowed me to shine light just through this jelly, clipping a bit of this and a bit of this. And because I had it so close, it had stopped by the time it got here. And that just gives me that beautiful glow in the jellies. And that's important because if I just lit the jelly like this, it'd look a bit flat. If I backlit the whole thing with a softbox, the whole image would be too flat. I still want it to be dark and moody. So it's not my best image, but I think it's a good way to show you this point. Now the flat lay. This is where your big softbox, small softbox argument comes in, which will be in a separate video. But this here was actually shot with, I think it was like 3 bare bulb Elinchrom ELB 1200s going through a scrim. And in this instance, it wasn't what is the best softbox. We were on location. We didn't have the best softbox because we couldn't carry it. We had to make do. But we still wanted, with the tomatoes, that nice rectangular window catch light, because that's important in food work. We needed to make sure that these were lit as well as these were, so we had to have enough distance as well. So this is not a case always of what is the best, but it's also what is practical. What do we have? What can we use? What do we have space to use? There's more to just like what's the best. It's not always the case. In my studio, yes, is what is best because we have complete control, but out on location, it's not so easy. This is actually the same location, and this time it was bare bulbs for a scrim, but we moved it further back, so we got this nice shadow and it's a bit harder, and we just umped the power to make it, still gives enough light onto the shot. Now we could have gone bare bulb only, but it wouldn't have, wouldn't have got the spill. But if you look here, how bright it is here compared to here, there's a real fall off and gradation of light across the shot there. And again, this is on location, so we're really working against it. We're using battery powered lights, and it's not an ideal scenario. Great, so I hope that was good for you, and I hope those images sort of helped you understand what you can and can't do with each modifier and the thought process behind them. Now, as I said at the start, this is tip of the iceberg stuff. This is very much a very vague, broad overview. There are a lot of modifiers and ways of modifying modifiers and scrims and flags and dots and all these grids and bits like that, which I haven't gone into here. What I'm going to try and do is make a video on each modifier and explain how to get the most out of them, how to modify your modifier, how to use it in different ways, because this is as broad could be. It's sort of like the introduction page to a book. Anyway, if you're enjoying these, do hit subscribe, do share it with people, and I'll see you all next time.